Hi guys and welcome to the latest episode of GTA Fancast with me, Gully, on the Wolves Fancast YouTube channel. Taking a slightly different approach to the video this week, whereby I'll be going through some clips and photos and just doing a voiceover on this occasion, mainly due to kind of time constraints on my part and being a quick turnaround before the Man City game. But just to get into it, regarding our 1-1 draw with Newcastle, the inevitable 1-1 draw as it now seems to be. First half, I don't really think we can be pleased with our output. Newcastle were allowed to really take the initiative in the game, and when you look at the touch maps of both teams, you can see here that Newcastle, that holy grail kind of space within the kind of 30 yards of goal, in the width of the penalty area, they seem to have a lot more activity than we do. You can see picking up plenty of the ball. You can see straight away as well they have an increased number of touches anyway. And we just allowed them to take the initiative in the game. And that's reflected as well in our lack of activity around that D of the penalty area especially as well. And considering the level of quality we have in attack, quite disappointing to see. And the other symptom of that, well, perhaps the cause even of that, is the lack of protection that we seem to have in the central part of the pitch, an area that Matinho and Neves especially really seem to thrive. When Neves is on his game, he's making plenty of interceptions, plenty of tackles, but again, you can see that dearth of activity from a defensive perspective within that zone that they would normally be patrolling, and we're just totally out of sync in that first half. Forced to play quite deep and just not impacting Newcastle at all. And if you compare that to the way they played, pushing up much higher up the pitch, active around the halfway line, as opposed to us really kind of dropping into our own half and even deeper than that in many instances. So both sides have quite similar threats in the form of Alain Saint-Maximin and Adama Traore, and I think both players kind of were symptomatic of the approaches of each team. And considering the way that Steve Bruce, generally speaking, has set up Newcastle and the way we tend to use Traore as well, it's a bit of a damning indictment to see that Saint-Maximin was a much more active presence around the penalty area, and they're both nominally playing kind of left of an attacking midfield position, able to cut in on their favoured right side, but with the license to go and beat people at will, like they tend to do anyway. And we saw how dangerous Saint-Maximin was in that first half an hour specifically, but throughout his time on the pitch, he was a nuisance for us. And it's no shame to be beaten by him as much as it isn't with Traore. But when you see that Saint-Maximin is positioned so close to the penalty area with a lot of his touches, and compare that to Traore, you can see straight away. And this is just the time on the pitch that Saint-Maximin had. So beyond the hour mark, perhaps there was a little bit more to show for Traore. But you can see he's picking up the ball either side of the halfway line on the majority of cases. Very wide as well, considering Johnny was operating as a wing back. That's slightly concerning to see. On the opportunity to drift inside, but at the same time, you can just see straight away he's not getting in and around the box enough, and that has to be because of the way it's being asked to play. It's really frustrating to think that we weren't on the front foot and able to utilise Traore close to goal. I think what we need to do with him is make sure that we're taking advantage of his abilities in more threatening positions of the pitch. We always ask him to do so much more than your average player, and I'll highlight this with a still that I've got here where he's picked up the ball out wide right on the far flank, and he's surrounded by two players, but he makes something of it and he manages to get into the box and provide a good chance for Neto, who pulls the shot wide. But in another instance here as well, he's picking up the ball relatively far from goal in not necessarily a threatening position, but the expectation is, because of his superior gifts and his ability to go past people, that he's been asked to work so much harder as a footballer, and it just doesn't seem like an efficient use of his capabilities. Asking him to say, most coaches in this kind of scenario would say, don't go down the line. You're playing onto your weaker side. There's plenty of cover defensively. Build play a little bit more, and then we can isolate someone into a one-on-one in a different situation, or perhaps even switch the play to the flank and hopefully create some kind of overload. But the insistence is still with Traoré to go out and just ask him to beat men at will, and I don't think we're getting the best out of him as a result. So the goal we scored was the result of some good play, and I think in the first half in particular, we tended to go a little bit too long and a bit too direct up to Willian Jose, who wasn't having a good time of it with Jamal Lascelles in particular. So I think in the second half they definitely sought to play a little bit more out from the back. And, I think we reaped the rewards of that, like I say, when we built up to the goal. You can see the situation here where Romain Saiss has picked up the ball. We've invited Newcastle to come and press onto us. You can see there's 3 players in there who are immediately bypassed. Well, in total, you can see in this space, Saiss finds Moutinho in that centre of the pitch. Plenty of distance between us, but the benefit of having these guys at the back is that they are able to pass through the lines really quite comfortably and well and set us on to attacks. And we're not good playing against deeper defences. So what we need to do is try and create that open space by drawing teams onto us like we did in this scenario. So the pass comes into Moutinho and you're taking 5 Newcastle players out of the game, and then the game opens up entirely. The ball gets switched out to Semedo. We've still got the likes of Traoré, Willian Jose, Neto ahead of the ball. Neves, as you can see, is making his dart towards the penalty area as well, and he's already ahead of his marker. So you can see here that Wolves are in a favourable position, but it doesn't happen without that initial pass out the back from Saiss, that bit of composure and quality that we obviously have. And eventually you find yourself in a crossing position, yes, but you've got a position here where there's 4 Wolves players attacking the box, and there's only 4 to 5 Newcastle defenders in situ, which creates a really favourable situation for attackers, especially from those wider positions. If we have a look at some of the other scenarios that we had where we were crossing the ball, I think you can see straight away that Newcastle was just a little bit more set. We're not, in that transition and making late runs. We're a bit more static in the box as well. In particular, on the occasion that Neto got to the byline and whipped the ball across, you can see straight away that it's not a favourable situation. Jose is well covered. You can see that Semedo is pretty well covered as well. There isn't a back post run happening, and Neto does a good job of getting the ball across. But it's kind of more in hope than expectation that we're actually finding somebody in there. So that was not on the back of a piece of play that was transitional. There weren't Newcastle players caught up the field, so it became, regardless of the ability of Neto to beat his man, quite a difficult situation to score from. And you're hoping for a little bit of luck, a bit of pinball, maybe even an own goal in that kind of scenario, rather than coaching a team to actually make different runs, do different things in that position. And I think we're lacking a little bit in the final third in terms of patterns of play, which I've mentioned a number of times previously. Just to highlight again that tendency for us to not really coach the final third. You can see a lot of our passes are into that wider channel. Anything, from in terms of trying to take people out the game, it's always an insistence on taking people on. And Traoré and Neto, Traoré in particular, did a really good job of it against Newcastle. And we were able to really force them back once we conceded the goal. And it just really frustrated, I think, in the sense that we showed our capability of really pinning them back and creating chances. This was probably one of our better attacking performances in recent weeks. We managed to get into the box plenty of times, but it all came off the back of being kind of kicked into gear by the concession of a goal. And against a team like Newcastle, I think, when in the situation we're in, we're not threatened by relegation. We want to be looking up the table. We want to be dominating teams. Why aren't we taking the initiative from minute one? And allowing teams like Newcastle, like I say, they've played us 3 years in a row now in the Premier League, and I think some of the players within the Newcastle setup know that they can have a go at us. And each time, we think about Lascelles last season, gave them the lead. Almiron early on against us at Molineux gave them the lead. We have to pull it back. It's not a sustainable way of playing against these teams. You have to go out and stamp your authority, especially when you have the quality that we have available to us. And I think we've got a lot of work to do still. Obviously, a very difficult game in prospect coming up against Man City on Tuesday. But why not just play a little bit more open, be a little bit more expansive, and show the world that we have a little bit more quality about us, and they have to respect the way that we play, because at the moment I don't think teams fear us whatsoever. I think there is a natural tendency for them to think, Wolves will give you a chance in a game, and that's what we do. We do give teams a chance, and I think stepping up 10 yards up the pitch, I think getting Traore and Neto to stay narrow and close to Willian Jose is the way to go about it. And hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that against Man City. I'm not hopeful of a result, to be perfectly honest. They're on an incredible run of form, and they have such strength in depth that if things even aren't going well for them for an hour or so, they can still change things up and really press home that advantage. But we have to give ourselves a little bit more of a chance in games, and give our attacking players the support that they deserve, because at the moment we're not getting the ball into them in real dangerous areas of the pitch, and they're not able to fulfil the massive potential that they have in those attacking areas. But like I say, we've got a difficult game coming up. Not hopefully of a positive result, but it's always an interesting one when you come against Man City from a tactical perspective. So I will be having a look at that game in depth after that. So I'll see you guys next week.